When our kids were young, we used to have a canoe and we'd take it on our family vacation by a lake. But I never really mastered the technique of getting into the canoe. You know, you kind of put it out into the water, and then when you put one foot in, it starts to drift away from you. And in that moment, you cannot waver, right? You either commit to getting fully into the boat or you get back out, because if you don't, you end up falling into the lake. And maybe like me, you've done that and got wet. Well, it's that indecision or wavering that Elijah addresses when he speaks to the people of Israel in 1 Kings 18. How long will you go limping between two different opinions? The image he's trying to convey there is like trying to walk on uneven ground. Other translations say, how long will you waver or hesitate between two opinions? The point is, they were sitting on the fence, and Elijah was urging them to make a decision. Come down on one side or the other, because if you don't, it won't end well. And that's the message that God wants to speak to us about today. About being all in, following Jesus with all our hearts, not sitting on the fence. And he says that to us in love, because he really does want the best for his children. So let's look once again at the story of Elijah, where he speaks to God's people, and see how it might apply to our lives today. As we've been reading in the story so far, God had directed Elijah to pray and to prophesy to King Ahab that there would be no rain in the land until he said so. And in the following months, God hid Elijah away and provided for him. But in 1 Kings 18, in the third year of the drought, we're told that the word of the Lord came to Elijah once again, saying, "Go, show yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth." Now, things were pretty desperate by this time. The drought had caused a severe famine, and King Ahab sent his chief of staff, a man called Obadiah, to go and look for grass for his horses and mules. It seems the king was more concerned about his mules than he was for the people. Now, Obadiah was a good man. He feared the Lord, and when Queen Jezebel was persecuting the Lord's prophets, he hid 100 of them in caves and took care of them. But he also feared the king. And so when he was out looking for grass and he encountered Elijah, he feared for his life, because he knew how much the king wanted to find Elijah. He'd already searched far and wide. And now Elijah was saying, "Tell the king I'm here." And Obadiah was fearful that if Elijah disappeared again, it would cost him his life. But Elijah swore an oath that he would show himself to the king. And so it was that Ahab went to meet with Elijah. And this is what it says. When Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" And Elijah answered, "I've not troubled Israel, but you have, and your father's house, because you've abandoned the commandments of the Lord and followed the Baals." Ahab called Elijah troubler of Israel because he sees him as the reason why there's a famine in the land. When in reality, as Elijah points out, Ahab is the one who's caused all the trouble by allowing his pagan wife Jezebel to promote her religion and the detestable practices of all the surrounding nations, like sacrificing their children to the fertility god Baal and his consort, the goddess Asherah. It's amazing, isn't it, how often we blame others for the mess we're in rather than admit to our own failings. But the truth is, God's people will often be seen as troublemakers because darkness does not like the light. It doesn't like being exposed. And when we're really walking with God and speaking and acting as his representatives, then we become troubling to people who are away from God or who deny God. The early church experienced that. They experienced times when they had great favour with all the people. You know, they were an attractive community, demonstrating sacrificial love and generosity to those around them. They cared for the poor, elevated women, healed the sick. But they were so revolutionary, it threatened people's way of life, and especially those who had power, like the religious leaders. And so we read in Acts 17 that when Paul and his companions arrived in Thessalonica, Paul taught in the synagogue and reasoned from the scriptures the truth about Jesus. And a number of Jews, as well as Greeks and a few prominent women, all came to believe. But it stirred up jealousy from the other Jews, who formed a mob and dragged some of the believers before the city officials, saying, "These men who have caused trouble all over the world have now come here. They're troublemakers." And all Paul had done was to tell them about Jesus. You know, it's been that way throughout history. John Wesley and George Whitefield experienced great hostility when they were opposed for preaching outdoors. I read that they were pelted with eggs and even dead cats. And the Methodist movement they started were ridiculed for their spirituality. You know, every move of God encounters similar resistance. And so will we, if we're truly seeking to follow Jesus and obey his commands. Of course, we should be careful not to actually make trouble. I mean, we shouldn't be difficult or hostile towards the culture we're in. The Apostle Paul wasn't speaking against the religious leaders. He wasn't denouncing the government or fighting against the culture. He was just proclaiming Jesus. And we must do the same. We are representatives of Jesus, which means we speak and act as he did, demonstrating love and compassion for the people around us, people we may not agree with, but at the same time obeying God and speaking up where there is injustice. You know, we're not to be troublemakers, but light bearers, hope givers, truth speakers. But that means we will be misunderstood, as Elijah was. Let's read what Elijah says next to Ahab. "Now therefore send and gather all Israel to me at Mount Carmel, and the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." And so Ahab sent to all the people of Israel and gathered the prophets together at Mount Carmel. What a sight that must have been. Ahab sent the orders out across the whole nation, and I expect for a few days people must have been streaming from all over the land to Mount Carmel. I mean, it must have been hundreds of thousands of people. And when they'd all gathered on the mountain, we read, "And Elijah came near to all the people and said, 'How long will you go limping between two different opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him.' And the people did not answer him a word." It's time to make up your mind. It's time to get off the fence, says Elijah. When Terry Virgo preached on this, he made the observation that Elijah drew near to the people. And it suggests that he was speaking to them with compassion, whereas he dealt harshly with the prophets of Baal. And Jesus did the same, didn't he? He was compassionate towards sinners, people who had lost their way. You know, he draws near to us. But he spoke harshly to the religious leaders, the priests and Pharisees, because they were leading the people astray. The people in Elijah's day, you know, they hadn't totally abandoned God. They had a long history with him. Their forefathers had followed his ways and kept his commandments. But over 2 generations they had drifted as they became increasingly attracted to the ways of the people around them. And they thought they could do both, you know, have the best of both. Keep one foot in with God and one foot in with the world. But it meant they were limping between these 2 ways of thinking. And Elijah said, you can't do that. You have to choose to give yourself to one or the other, because the 2 ways of thinking and living are totally opposed to one another. They are opposite, which means they can't both be right. You know, if one's right, the other's wrong. So make up your mind. You have to choose one or the other. You know, when you say you believe in God and yet your life is kind of reflecting the values and practices of the culture around you, then you are wavering between 2 opposing opinions. And we can't keep limping along like that, kind of, you know, flip-flopping from one to the other. It won't end well, right? You need to get off the fence and give yourself wholeheartedly to one or the other. As Jesus said, I'd rather you are hot or cold than be lukewarm. He also said, you cannot serve 2 masters. And the example he gave was God and mammon. Mammon being money and possessions. You cannot serve both, he said. And that's just as much an issue today as it was then. Not that there's anything wrong with having money or possessions, but when we start to love what these things can do for us, when it starts to affect how we live and think, then they have power over us. I mean, think about what money offers us. It says, I'll care for you. I'll provide for you. I'll give you peace and security. I'll satisfy your every need. Who else says that? God does. And only God can truly provide those things. But we'll never know that if we're looking elsewhere, kind of wavering between the two. And that's true for all kinds of things that can become God-like idols in our lives, because we're looking for them to give us what only God can give us. And that could be your career, your family, a relationship. It could be your appearance, your identity, your politics. I mean, they may be good things. But as Tim Keller said, when a good thing becomes an ultimate thing, the thing that we long for, then it becomes an idol. And you can usually tell when that's happened, because when it's threatened, when it's taken from us, when we don't get what we want, we become angry, fearful, despairing, or anxious. Can I ask you to be honest with yourself? Is there something that is becoming an idol in your life? It's not that you've abandoned God, but you really need this thing as well. Listen, you cannot serve two masters. Only God is ultimate. Only God can truly satisfy the deepest desires of our hearts, because only the God who created us fully knows us. And we'll never experience that until we get off the fence and give him our whole hearts. Of course, one of the biggest idols we serve is self, isn't it? Putting self first, living for self, which is why Jesus said if we're going to follow him, then we have to deny self. We cannot please God and please ourselves at the same time. Some common pursuits in our culture today are self-image, self-reality, self-care. All these things can become idols if we're not careful. They can lead us astray because they seek to give us what can only be found in God. Like his image in us, his design for our bodies, for our sexuality, for our relationships, his care for our lives. It's actually only when we live to please God and give ourselves wholeheartedly to him that we truly find ourselves, our true selves, because it's found in relationship with him. So, if we say that we believe in God, then we need to find out what he says and line up with it. And that's what it means to follow him. Because when we go against his words, we're wavering between two opinions. We're saying we know best. We're putting self above God. Let me give you an example. If I hold something against another person and allow bitterness to grow up in my heart and refuse to forgive them for what they've done, then I'm wavering between two opinions, mine and God's. Because God says I should forgive as he has forgiven me. Or perhaps you've done something that you're ashamed of, and you've asked God to forgive you, but you cannot forgive yourself. You keep beating yourself up over it. But can't you see? You're putting self above God. You're wavering between two opinions, because Jesus died on the cross to take away your sin and shame, and he says you're forgiven. God draws near to us. And in his love and compassion, he says, stop wavering. Stop limping between two opinions. I am the God who loves you more than anyone could possibly love you. More than you could ever love yourself. I love you with an everlasting, unending, unconditional, unfailing love. I am the God who created you, who knows you better than anyone. I know you better than yourself. I know what is best for you. I know the plans I have for you. I have promised good to you. In this world you may have trouble, but take heart. I've overcome the world for you, and I will never leave you or let you go. And I'm calling you today to get off the fence and follow me. Wholeheartedly, unreservedly, will you give me your whole heart? That's what Elijah was saying to the people, because the Lord was their God too. If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. And do you remember what the people said? Nothing. Nada. They were silent. Why? Unwilling? Ashamed? Fearful? I don't know. What I do know is that God is gracious. He is continually gracious towards us, even when we don't respond wholeheartedly. He didn't condemn his people. Elijah didn't call down fire from heaven upon them. He didn't even rebuke them. Instead, as we'll see next time, he challenged the prophets of Baal to a showdown, to show the people who really was Lord of all. God, in his grace, was going to consume Elijah's sacrifice to help his people get off the fence. And you know what? Centuries later, God demonstrated his grace to all mankind on another mount called Golgotha, where the ultimate sacrifice was made as God himself in the flesh bore all the sin and shame of mankind and was crucified on a cross before the whole world. But Jesus showed himself to be Lord of all as he triumphed over the forces of darkness and rose from the dead victorious. If Jesus is Lord, then follow him wholeheartedly, unreservedly, without hesitation. Jump in his boat, all in, right? Let's not compromise. The most miserable people on earth are Christians who are wavering between two opinions, sitting on the fence, envying the sinners their pleasure and the saints their joy, but not having either one. For goodness sake, come down on one side or the other. Be either hot or cold. But don't be lukewarm. You may be misunderstood, accused of making trouble. You may be ridiculed or pelted with dead cats. But ultimately, we're going to change the world because Jesus is Lord of all. Amen? Amen. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, I just pray that in your grace you would help each one of us today to follow you with all our hearts. Lord, will you forgive us for when we have compromised and wavered. Lord, strengthen us today. Give us wisdom and compassion for how we relate to those around us. But help us to proclaim you, Jesus, so that many might come to know that you truly are God. I pray this in your mighty name. Amen. Now here are some questions for small group discussion. For each group member, what particularly stood out to you in this message? And how did it help you? What are some common idols today? How can we prevent these things from becoming idols in our lives? And then pray, thanking God for his grace and asking for his help to follow him.